Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us at the 6th Subversive Festival. I'm very, very glad that on my left side, for the first time in this part of Europe, periphery of the European Union, we have Alexis Tsipras, the president of SYRIZA, and as Oliver Stone today said, hopefully the next prime minister of Greece. Please, a big applause. What should I say about Slavoj? You know Slavoj, he's here every year, so I don't have to introduce him anymore. Please, a big applause. Kostas is not applauding, come on. He's drinking a beer. We should send him to a Greek island or something. So first of all, a technical remark. We did expect so much people, but obviously we don't have enough headphones for simultaneous translation. Alexis Tsipras will, the original plan was for him to speak in Greek, although his English, Slavoj and me would agree, is perfect. He plans to speak in Greek, but he will now speak in English and sometimes in Greek if there is the need to do it. So the context of this roundtable is, as you all probably know, the soon accession of Croatia to the European Union. It's happening in just 1.5 months. As you all know, there was no real debate in Croatia about this topic. Either we had the pro-European propaganda or we had the against European propaganda. We at the Subversive Festival hope actually that this debate today will in a way compensate the missing debate in Croatia. So to begin, there is no mic, yeah. That was censorship because I wanted to use a joke. And it's a joke which Slavoj uses very often. It's the regular joke about the patient and the doctor. You know this joke, but you don't know where I will go. So it's, as you all know, the patient comes to the doctor and says, I'm very ill, I have headache, my legs hurt, I don't remember anything, and so on. And the doctor says, okay, I have a bad news and I have a good news. The bad news is you have cancer. But please don't worry, when you come home, you won't remember anything because you have Alzheimer. And listen, isn't this joke applicable to the accession of Croatia to the European Union as well? What's the bad news? The bad news is Croatia is in a huge financial crisis with corruption affairs, Ivo Sanader in jail, 90% of the banks are privatized, almost everything is privatized, big unemployment. We are the third country after Greece and Spain when it comes to the unemployment among youth. And what's the good news? We are entering the European Union. So, Croatia is accessing the European Union during the worst crisis of the European Union, but we are accessing this state anyway. I would first like Alexis Tsipras to give a short comment, maybe use his Greek experience, and I mean, what can Croatia expect in the European Union?
First of all, I want to thank you all for your participation here. It's a great honor for me to be in front of you. And I want to apologize for my English, but it was not organized to speak in English, but I'll try my best. Srećko said that maybe, probably, there are a lot of possibilities to be prime minister in Greece. I don't know if that will happen, but I know that if that will happen, then nothing will be the same, neither in Greece nor in European Union. Not because, of course, not because a left politician will be a prime minister, but because a radical left party will have the supporting of the people to make radical changes in one country that is all these years, 5 consecutive years, in a very tough recession austerity program. And after 5 consecutive years of recession, Greece is not under recession situation, is under depression, is under a humanitarian crisis, in front a huge humanitarian crisis. We have already lost 25% of the GDP. We have 30% official unemployment. And especially for the young people, unemployment is over 60%. And all this program is implemented because of the debt crisis. But I want to say you something. When Troika came to Greece, the public debt was 110% of GDP. And now the public debt is over 160% of GDP. This is the salvation for Greece. They solve the banks, but they destroy society. And of course, the big question is how we could change this situation. First of all, I want to give you some points of our analysis. We don't believe that this is an accident. We believe that this is a situation that they have a goal. They choose Greece as the guinea pig of a hard, a tough, neoliberal policy. We have never seen a program like that in Europe. Maybe we saw a similar program in Chile with Pinochet, a barbarian neoliberal program of austerity. And why they did that? They did that for 2 reasons. First of all, they wanted and they want to make a paradigm, a bad paradigm for the other European people, to see what it will be happen if people are aggressive in the austerity measures. And secondly, because they have a target, they have a goal. They have a goal to take the public rich of the people, to privatize everything in Greece and to earn money with this procedure. And what did they say at the beginning, 3 years before, at 2009? They said that the problem is that Greek people are very lazy and they are responsible for this situation. The people, not the banks, not the bankers that they gave loans to the people, and at the same time they knew that this loan is very difficult to be repaid. But they said that the problem is that Greeks are lazy, and they try to implement this doctrine of shock, as Naomi Campbell said. So, the problem for them is that after a few years, after a few months, they had to explain why the same problem is not only in Greece, but also in Portugal. Why the same problem is in Spain. Why the same problem is in Italy, in Ireland. Everybody in the European periphery, every people are lazy. And of course, the lazy Greek people started to react. We have the movement of the squares. We have the people on the street, in the streets demonstrate and try to react in this policy. And of course, everybody, you have seen these scenes of demonstration, huge demonstrations in Greece. And these demonstrations has some very particular results. First of all, Papandreou government was full. Second, Papadimos government was full. And third, 1 year ago, there was a real confrontation, a very big conflict. It was the first time in European level that a left party, radical left party, could take the power in the heart of Eurozone. The elections was the third round of this conflict. And in these elections, we weren't against the conservative party of Samaras. We were against the financial system of Europe. We were not alone because we have the supporting of the people of Europe. And we know that very much. We have the supporting of the people in Greece, of course. But we were against the financial market and banking system in Europe. You remember that they tried to make a propaganda against SYRIZA. Even they tried to write articles in German newspapers in Greek language that we are demagogues and we want to say to the people that everything is easy. People knows very well that everything is difficult. But at the same time, people understand that the more difficult is to continue this situation. So, this situation in Greece became more and more deteriorated. But I think that we are already vindicated in some of our points of our analysis. We first said in Greece that the problem and the crisis is not a Greek idiom. The crisis is a systemic, structural symptom of capitalism and neoliberalism. We believe that the problem is not the lazy Greek people, but that we are living the dead end of the neoliberalism in European level. That we live the peak of a global crisis of this capitalism, the casino capitalism, and that Europe now is in a crossroad. This Europe is not the Europe of the people, but is the Germanian Europe of the speculating markets. And sometimes, there are a lot of times that they said that the problem is that SYRIZA is an irresponsible political party, and SYRIZA and me personally is the danger of Europe. And I want to say sincerely that the danger for Europe is not SYRIZA. The danger for Europe is Germany and Merkel itself. With her policy, because if today there are a lot of possibilities that this Europe will be in a dead end, responsible is Merkel and her hegemony in European level. Responsible is the neoliberal policies in Europe. So I want to say that in Greece, of course, we are in a very difficult situation. There is a depression. People are being more and more disappointing, but at the same time, we believe that the only solution is these people, the coming back of the people. And I believe that very, very soon, we will see that the solution is the cooperation of the people in all European periphery and, of course, in all European Union. Because this confrontation is not between people and nations, but it's between, this war is between the forces, the labor forces at one hand, and the capital forces at the other hand. So I believe that very, very soon we will see a radical spring in Europe in which will change the situation. If you asked 2 years ago if there is a possibility in the Arabian countries to resist and to change these regimes in all these countries that have been over than 20 years, nobody could answer positively. The same is now. Nobody could believe that this situation could be changed in Europe. But I strongly believe, I consider that we need is a Mediterranean spring, like the Arab Spring. A Mediterranean spring of resistance of the people to change this situation, this barbarian situation for the people of Europe.
Thank you so much. So, Slavoj, you also come from the periphery, to say so, from Slovenia. And we're all part of the same, of the south of the European Union. In Slovenia, we had some signs of some sort of Mediterranean spring, we could say. You had the Occupy movement, some city mayor was overthrown, and so on. But this is not my question. My question is, you were one of the first on the left who supported Alexis Tsipras during the last elections. Why do you support SYRIZA, and why do you think SYRIZA and this movement is important for the rest of the European Union as well?
It's a beautiful question. To answer it fully,
you'll need 2 hours.
2.5. But nonetheless, I would like to precisely to answer, yes, exactly this question. When it was already, you, Alexis, said already, if SYRIZA wins, nothing will be the same in Europe. I take this absolutely literally, and that's crucial. In what sense? Listen, I don't like Al Gore, the ex-American vice president. He was a fake ecologist, I think, but he had a minimum of spirit. You remember, everyone expected him to win after Clinton. So, in a nice self-ironic move, he liked to describe himself afterwards as, I am the guy who once was the future American president, you know. And that's the dilemma that I see here. If SYRIZA wins, even I would say in a magical, retroactive way, all history will be read as pointing towards the SYRIZA victory. This will be the magic element, which is why I think the entire European establishment is so afraid of SYRIZA government. Because if SYRIZA wins and does something, it will be the end of certain European conservative wisdom, namely does what? Again, I think the fight that SYRIZA is fighting is the fight for the very soul of Europe. And I'm here without any shame, Eurocentrist. Okay, it's nice for political correct reason to blame Europe for everything, imperialism, colonialism, slavery. But my God, Europe did give, let's be proud about it, something wonderful to humanity, the idea of radical egalitarianism, of radical democracy, feminism, all that you want, this is at the core of European identity. And that is at stake today. So as Alexis said about who is the danger, it is today's defenders of Europe, Brussels technocrats or anti-immigrant nationalists. They are the threat to what is worth fighting for in European legacy. They are the true threat to Europe. Imagine a Europe which is now one of the possibilities, I claim, where you have economic neoliberalism combined with elements of anti-immigrant populism and so on and so on. Imagine this type of Europe. It's no longer Europe. It's the end of Europe. So we should be proud here, you know what I'm saying? We shouldn't be saying, oh, SYRIZA stands for those marginals, excluded and so on. No, SYRIZA stands for Europe. SYRIZA stands for what we should be proud of as Europeans. Second thing, don't buy all these rhetorics about SYRIZA making dangerous extremist experiments or whatever. SYRIZA is, and that's why I, without any restraint, I support it. SYRIZA is, to put it very simply, the voice of true reason, moderation, realism. No, the true dangerous experimenters are those in power. This is the lesson of this financial crisis and so on. And even when Western critics try to portray SYRIZA as playing on this anti-European sentiment. My God, I remember the last electoral Union of New Democracy. A couple of days it was shown on our TV, just before the elections. I was shocked. All things that were attributed to SYRIZA by the enemies, they were doing it. I remember a lady saying, who are the Germans to teach us? We already had Aeschylus and Sophocles, while Germans, I love this metaphor, were still playing football with human heads or whatever. But what I'm saying is that how here you see the hypocrisy of Europe at its purest. European Union, even pure technocrats, threw all their support for new democracy. And at the same time they claim Greek corruption, laziness, and so on and so on. But sorry, new democracy embodied this, what we refer to as Greek clientelism and so on and so on. So now it is as if you fight corruption and then you support the party which embodies this corruption. So why SYRIZA? You know what makes me sad? If you look at the history of the so-called radical left, you have one story which can give honorable results, but has its limits. Let's call it, to mention two big names, the Lula of Brazil, Lula-Mandela story. A movement with some more or less radical potential takes power and then basically accepts the game of international capital. Now, I'm not blaming them. First, some limited results can be produced in this way, like Lula did do certain good things and so on. And also one should ask frankly from people who accuse Mandela, African National Congress, of not introducing socialism, well, because of the reaction, probable reaction of international markets and so on, this could have been lead to an economic catastrophe. But this game is today, with the crisis of local capitalism, this, let's call it Tony Blair, third way game. We basically accept the neoliberal game. We just want to do a little bit more for healthcare and so on, but as Peter Mendelssohn, the dark prince of Tony Blair, likes to say, in economics we are all Thatcherites. The difference is just in our social policy, on the one hand. On the other hand, I'm tempted to say almost the worst case. It's even worse. We have the radical left, which takes power, or they even prefer sometimes not to take power, so that when everything goes wrong, they can write their books explaining in detail why things had to go wrong, you know. There is, in theory, at least some deeply rooted masochism of the radical left. The best books of the radical left are usually very convincing stories of failure. From Trotsky's writing the best books of what went wrong with Stalin, and so on and so on. Now, I will not be afraid, I'm not losing my thread. What I'm saying is that the uniqueness of SYRIZA is that its very existence rejects this false choice. On the one hand, it is a real principled radical left. On the other hand, they have this courage of taking over, although, as Alexis said, my God, everyone is aware the situation is difficult and so on. They know the almost incredible difficulty of the task ahead of them. Imagine a SYRIZA victory, but you know, Greece does have a strong clientelist state with big administration, and this overblown state administration will, of course, feel threatened by SYRIZA victory and so on. But nonetheless, at the same time, there is hope. And you know why? I was surprised a couple of months ago when I was in London. I read Financial Times. And there, I forgot his name, a neoliberal commentator, after your visit once there, I think, he said, in a very naive, sincere comment, but wait a minute, people are presenting to us Tsipras as some kind of a leftist madman, but he seems to be one of the few people who talks reason, good pragmatic reason in Europe. So I think that here we come on the central point, which was also developed by the Greek economist Varoufakis, who is here, whom I admire, and so on. You know, something very dangerous is happening now in Europe. To put it in simple, old-fashioned terms, I think that the European political elite is progressively losing its ability to rule. In other countries, even in the United States, with all the compromises and so on, Obama, blah, blah, is somehow doing it, Europe is losing its compass. We leftists have this ridiculous dream. We had it back in the 50s, that somewhere between Washington and New York, Wall Street, once a month, the true rulers meet. The true top capitalists, their secret committee, and they decide everything. Well, considering Europe today, I would have said, I pray if there at least would have been this type of secret committee of people who know what they are doing. There is not. Which is why I think that the task ahead of SYRIZA is not some crazy radical measures, but simply to, in a very pragmatic way, which will have very radical consequences, to bring rationality, to give people hope, to stabilize the situation, and so on and so on. You know, because people are often saying that, especially with regard to ecology, they're how we just think about profit, that we are too utilitarian, non-ethical, that we should have a more moral attitude. But wait a minute, today's capitalism is not utilitarian. From the very utilitarian pragmatic point, at least in Europe, today's capitalism is some nightmarish utopia which is bringing us all to ruin. And the paradox of Europe is that it's a genuine party of extreme left, which is effectively the party of pragmatism, of reason, and so on and so on. Because I more and more suspect that all this politics of austerity, it's not really a rational politics. It uses some mythical narratives, like what's the idea of austerity? What you produce, you can only spend, you cannot spend. These are like my old grandma's wisdoms, you know. In a real economy, it doesn't work like that. Or this idea that if you get indebted, you will have to pay up to pay back the debts. The whole history of United States of the last 40 years, it's a proof, no, that you can go on quite well for decades without paying your debts and so on. So what I'm saying is that we should become more attentive to the irrationality deeply embedded in our daily reactions, irrationality, ideological irrationality of the present global system. I don't buy everything that Paul Krugman is, but once he gave an ingenious answer. When he explained what went wrong that ended up in 2008 crisis, he was asked, what would you think were to happen if we were to know all this 10 years before? His answer was nothing. Everything would have been the same. That's the tragedy of today's capitalism. Even if you know it, you are still acting following your illusions, as if you don't know it. So again, that's the reason SYRIZA is not a Greek phenomenon. SYRIZA is something that is one of the few signs of hope for the entire Europe, which is why we can see this clearly if you just compare SYRIZA with other European countries where there were protests. I have full sympathy with the Spanish people, but if you look at the program of the that humiliated or whatever in Spain, are these basically these general phrases, like we want money to serve people, not people to serve money. Well, fuck it, Nazis would agree with it, no? You know what I mean? It's just this general humanitarian point. It's not enough. Not to mention they are progressive events, protest movements in Paris, in London, but SYRIZA is the only one which brought this, let's call it negative mobilization, this reaction of I had enough of it. It cannot go like this, that brought this a step further towards organized political movement, which is why I think SYRIZA is one of the few bright lighthouses, as it were, in Europe today. And the test of people, when you ask them what they think about Europe, is simply to ask them, what do you think about SYRIZA? If they don't support SYRIZA, then, in my vision of democratic future, all these people will get from me a first-class one-way ticket to Gulag, to Siberia. Thank you very much.
Slavoj already mentioned several points which I think could be interesting for the development of our further discussion. On the one hand, you mentioned the European leaders who are, in a way, completely lost. Besides new austerity measures, they don't have any new model which they can invent in order to get full employment, industrialization, and so on. On the other hand, you mentioned Lula, and Alexis Tsipras was recently at the funeral of Chavez. And in one of your interviews, you mentioned that Argentina, after the financial crash, could be a model for Greece. So a question I would like to pose is the old Leninist question. Not only what is to be done, but the answer everyone wants to hear, actually, not only in this room, but also other countries and people of the European Union. What are the concrete measures and steps SYRIZA would take if you would form the government? In some of the interviews, and maybe you can also explain more about that, because the debt question is also a big question in Croatia. You mentioned that the situation with Germany after the Second World War, with the cancellation of the half of the debt, could be a model to be followed by Greece. And there are other measures as well. So my question is actually, what can the organized, institutionalized left, the party of SYRIZA, do if it gets to power?
Okay, first of all, I think that the situation in Greece is like in Germany, not after the Second World War, but after the First World War. there was the Weimar Contract, not the memorandum, but it was also a very tough program, fiscal program, an adjustment that created the Nazis. And this is the big threat and the big danger for Greece. Of course, this situation in Greece has two sides. The first side is the side of hope that SYRIZA gave. But the second side is the side of terror that Golden Dawn gave, with this percentage in the elections and with these percentages in the opinion polls. They have already over 10%. The Golden Dawn is the neo-Nazis in Greece. So we have to understand that these austerity programs create this terror of neo-Nazis. And we have to stop this development. And we have to learn a lot about the near history of Europe. What happened in Europe after the crisis of 1929 and what happened in the other side of the Atlantic. They had the New Deal. In the Central Europe, we had the recession. And this is the difference. So you said that what we're going to do, and you said something that there are a lot of similarities with the Argentinians after the default. But of course, there are a lot of differences with Argentinians. First of all, we don't have a national currency linked, connected with another currency. Argentinians had pesos connected with dollar. We don't have drachmas connected with euro. We have euros, only euros. Not only in the banks, but also under the pillows, in homes, everybody has euros. And the difficulty for a radical left government is that if we have a change, a disaster in Eurozone, and we have the end of euro, there will be a difficult situation because you know that, of course, it will be a whole disaster for whole Eurozone, but at the same time it will be in a difficult position because everybody who have euros would have the chance to buy everything because our national currency will be devaluated more and more, and this devaluation will be added in the internal devaluation that we have already done with the austerity programs. So this is the difference with Argentina. And of course, it's another difference that we don't have the productive possibilities that Argentina had. You know, Greece is not so large country. Of course, we have some levels in our economy that we could reinforce. The quality, agricultural level of economy, but not. There are a lot of differences with Argentina. Anyway, I think that our nuclear weapon is that we are members of Eurozone. And I will try to explain what I said. Our disadvantage that we don't have our national currency is at the same time our advantage because we are members of the Eurozone, of the Euro, and I believe and we believe that we consider that Euro is like a chain with 17 links, the 17 countries that belongs to Eurozone. If one link will be broken, the chain will be collapsed. This is our nuclear weapon. But this will be a nuclear weapon if the government have the guards, they have the how can I say, the government try to negotiate tough, hardly, in European level, to win the best for the people. Till now, we had governments in Greece that never negotiated the program, but we had governments that tried to implement and only to implement the orders because they believed what they believed. They believed that what Thatcher said in the beginning of 90s, there is no alternative. This was their slogan, there is no alternative. So if there is no alternative, the only way you have to take is the way of the demolition of the disaster, this way of recession, the way of losing the dignity, the sovereignty, the national and people's sovereignty, and this is the disaster in Greece now. So we asked what the first steps of radical left government will be. First of all, as I said before, I believe that everything will change because politics is a balance of power. So if a radical government in the heart of Eurozone will be either in Greece or in another country, nothing will be the same. So we have said that if we will win the elections, if we won the elections in June of 2012, we will implement our promises. We will cancellate the memorandum of understanding. We will reject the memorandum and we will try to reinforce the active demand with a few words to give money to these people, to those people that everything they have, they will spend. We'll try to redistribute the welfare. And we will try to get all these people that they don't pay taxes to the state, all these ship owners, all these big capital guys in Greece, because Greece is special situation, special case. You know that all that time of growth in Greece, the last decade of growth, we were 4 percentages of GDP lower in the public incomes than the average of Eurozone. And why? Not because the laborers and the middle classes people didn't pay taxes, but because the richest didn't pay taxes. So I think that our plan will be a plan of stabilization by trying to get money for the richest and to give money to the poorest, to the people that everything that they could spend to have the active demand that the economist says. So I believe that this is the solution in the problem. Of course, I believe that it's very difficult because we are in a globalized economy, we are members of European Union, and nothing will change normally and easily if we won't have radical changes in the European level. So that's why I said before that it will be a very hard conflict, confrontation. The negotiation will not be an easily walk in the gardens in the spring. It will be a very tough, a very hard conflict between the left government and our partners. That's why I believe that we need alliances. our best allies are the people of Europe, not only the people of the South, but at the same time, the people of the North. Because we believe that this adjustment that Merkel strategy tried to do in Europe, it will be very different if she decided not to implement austerity programs in the south of Europe, in the periphery, but to give money to the laborers in Germany, in the northern countries. Because at the same time, the deficits of the south are the surpluses of the north. So I believe that we'll try to negotiate hard and tough. Our position is that we will not go away and we will remain in our positions. And of course, this blackmail of getting Greece outside Euro will be changed, and the blackmail will be, and the ball will change field, and the blackmail it will be to the Germans. Secondly, I believe that there is a possibility to change the situation in Europe if the balances change, and if we try to implement a solution like the proposals that a lot of progressive economies have already done. Some of them are Varoufakis and Stuart Holland. Or if we try to convince our partners with the alliance, a great alliance of the people, and especially of the southern and periphery countries, for a European summit for the public debt, like what happened in 1953 in London, and it was about Germany. How we had this economical miracle for Germany after the Second World War. In London, in 1953, there was an international summit which decided the cancellation of a very, very big part of the German debt, about 60%, a moratorium for the repayment, and the growth clause. That means that if Germany had growth, they will pay. If they didn't have growth, they wouldn't pay. And that's why Germany now is the hegemonical force in all Europe. So we believe that this is the solution, the European solution, the win-win European solution. Otherwise, there is no way for Europe. Keynes had said something that's very, very clever, that the problem, that if you owe 5,000 euro to a bank, the problem is yours. But if you owe 50 billion euros to a bank, the problem is for the bank.
Thanks. So first, I would like to of Slavoj about the new alliances, of course. Who could be the potential new allies in this struggle? That's the first part of the question. And the second part of the question, we all know, or most of us, that Alexis is a big fan of football, as we could hear. So what will happen if the ball really ends up in our hands, to put it like this? Actually, that's the second part of the question. If we have in front of us, in front of our eyes, the experience of the German left and of the German Greens after '68, when they got into the institutions, don't we return back to the old Rudi Dutschke dilemma about the long march through the institutions? So my question is actually, if SYRIZA really gets the ball into their hands, how can we avoid the mistakes of the past?
Maybe first, very very briefly, the second question. You know, there is a big difference in the very basic situation. After 68, with the Green Party in Germany and so on, Social Democrats, there still was, capitalism, welfare state was not yet really in a crisis. There still was a great field of opportunities there. While today, precisely, the systemic crisis is here, which is why I think that just a simple return to the old social democratic welfare state is not a solution. And here I also agree with your, Alexis, subtle hint that with all our sympathies for Latin America, I don't believe in this simplistic story of some European leftists. Look, Europe is in a crisis, Latin America is doing well, so we should simply follow the Latin American way. It's not as simple as that. But what I want to emphasize, as you correctly pointed out, is this question of alliances. Because, you know, this is my old motto, but I would like to repeat it. I'm not too fascinated with these big revolutions, 1 million people on Tahrir Square, a kind of a collective orgasm, we all cry with them and so on, we are together. Yeah, that's good, but for me the question is the morning after. Like, what will, I can imagine a triumph, all Athens will be crying, blah, blah, if you win. But then what interests me, and you also, because you're a serious guy, is what will your victory mean in the lives of ordinary people when life returns back to normal? And here, as you pointed out, it's a question of intelligent alliances. Like what you said may be misinterpreted as if you just want to take from the rich, give it back to the poor. But we all know, and you know it, that it's not just this old simple redistribution. One has to be very careful here, since we will, at least for some decades, definitely still live within capitalism. I will put forward, I'm sorry if I will use a horrible term, what in the old communist days was called this mysterious category of so-called patriotic bourgeoisie, Capitalists who, because of their situation, are not just part of some international exploitative mafia, but have genuine interest in producing for the people and so on and so on. So I think it's crucial that in these redistributive gestures that you outlined, that it's not just generally strike at the rich, but it should be a very carefully planned strategy that, how should I put it very naively, there are things which work with capitalism if applied properly. Competition, especially a small level production of consumerist goods and so on. Why not? I think what crazy as it will sound what I will say now, but for me, a dream of what SYRIZA should be, within this global redistribution, it should make life easier even for truly productive capitalists and so on. The problem of Greece is a very specific one. It's again the link of state clientelism with international banks and so on, which, as every intelligent economist will tell you, it's bad even for the truly productive local capitalist class and so on. That would be for me, if you ask me, maybe I'm crazy here, a true triumph of SYRIZA. That they would say, not only did we make it easier for the workers, if you are a good, honest capitalist, you should vote for us, And I'm ready to come to you and be some kind of a voice of capitalists for SYRIZA. That would be my dream. Second thing, it's very important what... Sorry?
There were some of them that they admitted.
Really? Yes. And this, you should protect them like your hair, those. Second thing, what you said about Golden Dawn. Here again, it's not a Greek peculiarity. It's not, stupid Greeks, now you don't find your way and escape into fascism and so on. I see Golden Dawn just as one aspect of, unfortunately, a trend all around Europe. Here, in Croatia, and in my country, Slovenia, how public discourse is changing. Now, I think here, Catholic Church openly celebrates the anniversary of the death or whatever of Ante Pavelic, all that stuff, and so on. And even generally, I noticed how in the last decades, there is a subtle rewriting of the World War II. Well, as many conservative historians like Niall Ferguson like to emphasize, it wasn't simply that the good side won, it was much more ambiguous. What goes with this is then a subtle rehabilitation of soft fascisms. They say, okay, we concede you, Hitler was bad, but Mussolini, Franco, maybe he wasn't such a bad guy, and so on and so on. It's a general trend. And this is what worries me, how things which were unthinkable in Europe, let's say 30 years ago. 30 years ago we had a pact. Europe was founded on anti-fascism, which is why the successor of fascist parties, neo-fascist parties, you don't talk to them. You tolerate them as part of democratic space, but under no conditions should they be permitted to participate in government. Now all this is changing. I mean, in the bad sense, no? So this is the second thing I want to emphasize. And then the last thing, banking system and so on. On the one hand, one should not fetishize banks. Today's dynamic economy needs banks. You know, it's too simple, that pseudo-Keynesian idea, not Wall Street but Main Street. Banks as such are not the problem, but I claim, if we go to debt, this is again an example of that simplistic thinking. You know, what austerity measure theories are trying to sell us is this simplified image. What does debt mean? You worked hard, I borrow, now I don't want to pay you back, and so on. But if you look really closely at how in indebted countries it works, it's never the situation like this. The first thing you know that if you look closely at this structure of debts, my God, 70-80% of the money is virtual speculative money with no coverage in whatever we call real commodities and so on. Or take the example of Iceland, where a couple of private speculators succeeded in ruining the entire state and so on. And I think sooner or later we will have to confront here the problem that simply, even in the interest of capitalist production, the ongoing global banking system cannot do its function. I don't have precise answer, but some kind of popular state regulation of banks will have to be enacted. If banks are allowed to function the way they function now, again, it will be an obstacle in the long term, even for successful capitalist reproduction, I came. So we will here really need, as you said, an unorthodox thinking with broad alliances, where it is crucial to convince against element of what I ironically called progressive bourgeoisie and so on, that SYRIZA shouldn't just do some crazy leftist revolution. SYRIZA should even modernized Greek state, made it a finally efficient, even a much better bourgeois state, if you want, no? And this is a chance for SYRIZA. I think that this is the unique chance. You will have to do the decent job that the capitalist ruling class wasn't able to do for themselves. But as you yourself said, you will need a lot of wisdom. Because this orthodox leftist temptation, you know, let's not betray our principle, let's be radical and so on. It's such a, I mean, did you notice how I claim in the last decades, radical left, that's why I admire you. Secretly, I don't think they even really want power. They prefer to be these negative prophets, and secretly, they really don't want power. Which is why I admire leftists. Yeah. So, again, we are coming back to this. You have a unique chance, in a way. And, okay, I'm an atheist, but I will say as an atheist, all our prayers will be with you.
So one last question for Alexis, and then we will leave the floor for Q&A and for your questions as well. Actually, it's two questions again, and I would return to the question posed to Slavoj.
But maybe I talk too much, so maybe if you want, we can go directly to give voice to the people.
Right away, or? But I really wanted to ask this question, okay. Alexis, not you,
No,
but him.
From you, as a good Stalinist, that this debate looks that you already distributed.
That's the reason why we invited Oliver Stone. So he distributed the questions, and he's a great director. So I hope all the questions will be on our side, you know, and we will have the ball on it. The question was actually I would return to the day after. SYRIZA is known as a very broad coalition, and you actually succeeded to get rid of the classical problem of all, or the main problem of all leftist groups, and that's fractionism. You know, you have this fraction, and so on. And there is a great article which my friend here in the first row told me to read, and that's an old article Slavoj probably knows, by Lukács, called Hotel Abgrund. So you have this hotel where all the leftists are either they're drinking wine, or they are having fights among fractions and so on, but the abyss is somewhere here. And at the time when they're having these fights and they say, oh, I'm an anarchist, I'm a liberal, and blah, 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 they don't perceive the abyss which is still here. So I think you actually perceived the abyss and you succeeded to get rid of this fraction. So my first question is, how did you do this tough job to make this broad coalition? And actually, when I was in Athens, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, then you said that SYRIZA is now actually also legally becoming one party and not only a coalition. If I go to the second question, we will forget the first, so I will stay at this one.
So, if I want to be honest, I have to say that we didn't understood how that happens. Because I believe that people made this change to SYRIZA, not SYRIZA itself. 1 year ago, before the first elections of May, 1 month before the first election of May, we discussed, and I remember that very well, we had our Politburo, let's say, and we discussed about how we will go to the elections. And I had the feeling that something will change, that people will support SYRIZA in the elections. But of course, it was a crazy dream to believe that we are near to get the power. But I proposed to our comrades to change the typical papers that we give before the elections, and to be not a coalition, but to be a party. Because the electoral law didn't give to the coalitions the bonus of 50 members of the parliament if it would be the first party. This is the crazy law in Greece. That's why we have only 71 members of the parliament, even if we had only 2 percentages difference with the first party. And I proposed to our comrades to change this, but typically not but to change the official papers and to try to get the bonus if it will be the first in the elections. It will be first in the elections. And everybody believed that I was crazy. Because nobody, even me, believe that it's a possibility to be so close to the power. So, yes, I was also believe that I was crazy. What I want to say that if I made the proposal to try to unificate, to try to transform the coalition into a a party, a united party, before the first election, nobody could accept this proposal. But at the same time, the same day of the election, the voters, people, give us the order to do this transformation. People give us the order to be the leader party, the leader force, to to try to unite all the left forces, and not only the left forces of Greek society, but all these forces that they want a big change. If you see the results, the election results of the first and the second elections in Greece, you will see a great division, classist division and age division. The people that which they voted for us, there were young people, and people of the labor and middle class. Especially in the labor regions of Greece, we have 40%. In the bourgeoisie regions, we had 15%. In the ages of 18 to 45, we had 45%. In the ages of under 16, over 60, we had 15%. 15%. So it was a joke. So it was a joke during the elections in Greece. If we want SYRIZA to win, we'll have one solution: to lock our grandmothers and grandfathers in the home. But anyway, I want to say that this is a very, very big transformation of the belief of the people. And I believe that this is what happened with SYRIZA is not a change of the majority of the people to the radical left, but is a change of the convincing of people and a radical change of the convincing of people. People try to think not with a political taboo, but try to think about their needs. People wanted a big change, a radical change. And they trust us because they believed, and I hope that they will still believe, that we are the only political power in Greece, that we will not that we will do what we promised, that we have our hands clear, that we weren't corrupted in the past. This was our big power. Our big power was that we promised to change the situation and not to try to give some facilities to every of our voters. Our big power was that nobody was in my office or in our members of parliament office to ask for something after the elections. But everybody asked for us to be in the same position after the elections that we were before the elections. This was the big change in the convincence of Greek people and Greek society during this period in Greece. And I think that this is also our big power. Nobody expects for SYRIZA to change the situation suddenly from the one day to the other. But everybody expects for us to be in the same position, to don't go away of our position, even we will have a very tough attack for our enemies. I don't know if this is difficult. Of course, it's very difficult for us, but I think that this is a big change, not only political level, but also in the level of the behavior of the people. And this is very important. It's very important to try to understand what happened in Greece all these 2 months, May and June of 2012.
I think maybe you should move to Croatia to make some fun here as well. So now we have already the first question. Please raise your hands and then I will try to, there we have another question and we will take there a question. So 3 questions first here, and first we take the questions and then we answer, I suggest.
Comrade Alexis Tsipras, I am very happy that you are here because I have some difficulties in brain. According to your name and your being. Newspapers in our countries, I am from Austria, wrote that this is called radical left, but it is radical left and we should fear it. Other newspapers wrote it's called radical left, but in the core they are social democrats as we know them, and we should be quiet and calm, that we will not be something to fear. And for me, as a radical left, it was this case would be the Sabagau. If your name is radical left, you are a social democrat in your heart, you stir up the hopes of the people and you disappoint it. This would be the Sabagau, for not only for me, but for the Greece people too, I think. And
Since supper, what would it say?
Sabagau, atomic plants going up. According to the history of social democrats and the damages they have caused during the history, the more intelligent social democrats nowadays don't call themselves social democrats because it is such worse tradition. You cannot be in it.
Can you please pose the question?
Yes, it is a question for you. You are here, you can say authentic how you see you in these dilemmas, and to put it, for me, social democratism in the core, independent from the names, is slavery to the bourgeois state and slavery to parliamentarism.
Okay.
No, not really. In this sense, Slavoj Žižek, which is aiming for a bourgeois state which is effective, in some case, how could be called a social democrat. And I have to make an alternative. Yes, I have to make an alternative suggestion. I would start in the next weeks. We can start in Greece. We have to suggest it. We can declare the Commune of Crete. The left is in the far majority.
Okay. Because there are many other people. Thanks. I would. So the question there. Can you please raise the hand again? I would really like to kindly ask. We'll take 3 questions and then we answer. I would kindly ask you to pose short questions. I mean, I know comments are also important, but it's also important as many people as possible have the chance to speak. So please.
So Alexis Tsipras, you said that one of the strengths and advantages and disadvantages of Greece was that your currency now is euro. You do not have your own currency. I wanted to ask your opinion on the Croatian position as it is, because we are entering the European Union, but are still keeping our currency. So in your opinion, what could this mean for a country that's just entering the European recession, with our own recession, but we still have some form of power over our own currency? And how could this play to our advantage or disadvantage?
Thanks a lot for the sharp question. Can you please stand up so we can see you? Yes, and can you, it's on the left side, yeah, thanks.
Okay. My first question is for Alexander. So I want to ask, what is SYRIZA's position on something maybe more deeper about about subjectivity,
Of
in
what?
terms of subjectivity.
Subjectivity,
Yeah, in terms of inspiring and creating a message that inspires young people that is beyond the economic confines of redistribution, but a vision that is kind of maybe the last unfinished dream of May '68, that a new society, a new spirit, freedom, so on and so on. I'll leave it at that. And my next one's for Slavoj. You posted an article in The Guardian regarding, I think, titled, "The Left Needs a Thatcher of the Left." And I'd like you to clarify that position, maybe. Is that a reference to like a Lacanian big other left, or literally a strong leader of the left? That's it.
Thanks a lot. So we have 3 or even more questions. The first question was about social democracy and radical left. I don't know if you actually, maybe you could explain more about the bourgeoisie state, because I think many will get you wrong, as with the article that we need a Margaret Thatcher of the left. So maybe this is a great opportunity to explain it more. The second question was about Euro in Croatia, and we just heard the third. So maybe we start with, or however you decide.
Maybe I will try, impossible dream, to be shorter.
Okay, just 2 comments. The first is that social democracy, not only in Greece with the collapse of PASOK, but also in whole Europe and in international level, is in a strategic dead end. And this is not by accident. This is because social democracy decided to include in their targets, in its targets, neoliberal strategy and policies. So, for example, now, what's the differences between Steinbrück and Merkel in Germany? I cannot find the differences. Steinbrück is the candidate chancellor of Social Democrats in Germany. What's the differences? And this is why he has no possibility to win Merkel. Because if you don't have differences, people will vote the original, not the fake. So the problem for social democracy is that he loses the roots of the relations with the social forces. The social forces that supported social democracy to be in the government, to be in the power the last years. And this is very clear in Greece. Why PASOK now is, in the opinion polls, 6%? Because there is a representation crisis. Representation crisis. They don't represent the social forces that they represented in the past. The middle classes, the poorest, all these people that supported SYRIZA in the last elections. So I believe that the way to lose our honestly and our dignity and our identity and to lose any possibility to win the game is to be more social democratize our position. And I promise to you that it will never happen. The second question was about the... and let me say something. I think it's very important. What is radical today? What is radical position? Is it radical position to be away of the game and to keep your identity, your flags, your red flags, but at the same time to be away for the game? To don't be able, to don't want to have the responsibility to take the power to change the situation. People die in Greece, and there are also, in these periods, a lot of parties and organizations of the left and radical left in Greece that they don't accuse the government and the memorandum, but SYRIZA, because SYRIZA is opportunistic. And let me say something. When I was back from Venezuela, when I was in Chávez's funeral, I had a speech and I said that somebody asked me, what was that impressed you in Venezuela with Chávez? And I said that I was impressed by Chávez because he tried to make radical changes without fear to have alliances with center-left guys and right guys after the first elections in Venezuela. In his government, he had guys for the right and for the center-left. But his government was the more radical government in Latin America. And the second thing that I was impressed about Chávez was that he insisted in the democratic way. His power was the power of the people, because every time he made referendums, he won elections. He have already won 13 times referendum and elections in Venezuela. And that was his power, not the supporting of the capitalism, of course, or of the corruption, but the supporting of the power. So I believe that today radical is to try to be able to take responsibility for the people, to not be afraid of that, and at the same time to maintain in the democratic road, in the democratic way, to take the power for the people and to give it back to the people. The last question was about the situation in Croatia and the advantage or disadvantage to be outside Europe. For our experience, don't think about to be in Europe. Don't think about it. It will be a truly disaster for you. It's absolutely different to be inside and to think what we have to do. But now we don't have any reason to be inside Eurozone, especially in this period with this strategy of the leadership of European Union.
Okay. First, the last question, because I will be shorter, leader and so on. Yeah, I mean it in a quite naive, totally serious way. I have a hypothesis which freezes the blood of many of my friends. If you want to have a real popular mobilization beyond, above the standard bureaucratized party politics, you need a charismatic leader. The biggest proof is Chávez himself. And I totally reject this liberal game, oh, this means I want a new Stalin or whatever, whatever. No, sorry, there are genuine charismatic leaders who are not Stalin or whatever and so on. And we shouldn't be blackmailed here. And yeah, I will answer you now also. Sorry? First, I think, not that it's the first time in my life, I like this, that I was accused of being a social democrat. Usually I'm accused of, even the Greek press, accused me that you come to me so that they give you secret instructions how, if you win, you will introduce police state in Greece and so on. But I would nonetheless like to say this. When you painted the social democracy as the ultimate catastrophe and so on, yeah, but let's be frank. The so-called Stalinist state socialism was also a no less mega catastrophe than social democracy. Sorry to tell you. Last thing, now comes the truly problematic point. I think, and this will be something that many of you will not agree, as much as I support, as long as it goes, this dream of non-representative immediate democracy and so on, I don't believe that different forms of local self-organization and so on, whatever, communal cooperations and so on, have the potentials to universalize themselves. I'm here, shamelessly I'm saying back from Marx to Hegel, we need to reinvent the state. We need more than ever a strong regulative state. I wish you all the well with your Crete commune, and it will be maybe a nice tourist attraction, like they are now the Zapatista. You know, they had their leader in Mexico, Subcomandante Marcos. Now, it's in a fully justified way. He is now called Subcomandante Marcos, because I seriously mean it. What do you believe in? That there will be some kind of direct sense that local communes with... Yeah, and I know what I'm talking about. I was there. The moment he started to play moral authority, he was totally integrated. They love him. The most corrupted politicians love him, and so on and so on. It's, for me, intellectual tourism. It lost the moment, the path he has chosen. Here, I must say, I'm totally opposed to his official ideologies. Who was here, I think? John Holloway or who? No? He was not here, no. No, sorry, I met him in London, yes. Who said, for example, Holloway also tried to appropriate the Greece protest. He said, I was in Greece and it was wonderful. A park was proclaimed liberated zone, and they put on the entrance gate to a park in Athens an inscription, entrance prohibited to capitalism, and so on. And I answered him, if I were to be the most corrupted capitalist, I would support the idea of these parks. It's wonderful. You have a closed space where people feel to be free, so that then they work even better on Monday when they return to their office. You see, that's what I'm saying. I think that the greatest, most dangerous dream of the left was precisely this idea of some type of immediate, self-transparent, direct democracy where finally people will get rid of all alienated forums and so on and directly self-organize themselves. Show me only one example where it worked for more than 2-3 months. Huh? Yeah, for 2 months, yes. For 2 months, yes. I don't want that. I want him to be in power, for life. I want him to be re-elected with Stalinist numbers, like, okay, not Saddam numbers, not 101%. Yeah, no, I'm quite serious here, because, that's what I was saying before. I don't like these enthusiastic moments. Oh, for 2 months people are in power, and then what? And then you meet once a year in a cafeteria and have nostalgic memories, how wonderful they were those months. But then in the middle of those nostalgic memories, your phone rang. Sorry, I have to run back to my bank now. The boss is calling me and so on. I want the left to offer an actual alternative for the daily life when the enthusiasm is over. I want the left to be able to change things at the most everyday common life level. You cannot have all the time this enthusiastic participatory democracy mobilization. Let's be frank. I don't want to be mobilized politically all the time. I want an anonymous power which, in a relatively efficient, non-corrupted way, does its job so that I can do my crazy philosophy and maybe your president can do his boring symphonies or whatever he's doing. I mean, you see my point. That's for me the true challenge of the left. Don't fall in love with this enthusiastic moment of, oh, it's immediate democracy. Yes, it is for 2 months. Give me any other. What will you tell me? Cultural revolution in China or whatever. Give me one example where it worked so that it also survived passage to, how should I call it, when things return to normal. I'm just saying that I have serious doubts that this immediate, as the Germans call it, Räterepublik, that immediate council Soviet organization, that it has the potential to universalize itself. For example, I was in Latin America. I know the situation. I spoke with Linera, who it said that he's not here. He's my friend. And he made this clear to me that he told me that with all this local self-organization that they have in Bolivia, he told me that his big lesson is that to have a really functioning local direct democracy, you need a very well organized state background, providing basic safety, the whole educational system, and so on and so on. Now, I'm not saying we should keep the old bourgeois state. I'm saying we should reinvent also these large-scale mechanisms. I'm sorry, I was on purpose trying to provoke you.
No. Tomorrow, wait. Wait, please.
Half a minute to it.
No, it will be 3 minutes and there are 700 people. Please, there will be opportunity now. I will announce it. Excuse me? And so what? That's my function. I'm the moderator, sorry. I'm here to stop you and to leave other people speak as well. But okay, you got the mic if it will be very short, please. Okay, no. Okay, you see the direct democracy here, right? People are not satisfied, they want their questions, sorry. I have just 4 short announcements and then we take another 3 questions before we end. The first announcement is a bit sad one. No. No, you will read your Hegel afterwards. So that's the good news. The bad news is Linera is not coming. And I'm really very sad, but because of some complications, I cannot go into detail. Unfortunately, the Vice President of Bolivia won't be with us on Friday. If you bought a ticket for the lecture, you can exchange it for any other lecture, and let's hope next year Linera will be with us. Second announcement, if you didn't have the chance to pose a question, or you won't have a chance to pose a question, and you have specific questions to Alexis or to Slavoj, tomorrow at 12 o'clock, Alexis Tsipras is giving a very important press conference on the upper floor in our press center. And not only the press is invited, but also the press, yeah? And third announcement, Slavoj is having a lecture tomorrow on love as a political category, so I think it will be fun as well.
Love for the leader.
Love for the leader. It's at 9 o'clock. And last but not least, beside intellectual debates and revolution, we also have to dance. So tonight, after this, from 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, we have a party for all our guests, with some of our guests in VIP Club at the main square. I think Alexis is protesting and he wants to go dance right now, or? If not, shall we take some more questions? Yeah, please. There is one question, second question, and third question there.
You may call me naive, but I think that in Greece, bigger problem than Merkel and EU is nationalism, and you haven't confronted any of it except when mentioning Golden Dawn. So I mean, it's also important. I mean, convince me that I'm naive, I would say.
Let's say that nationalism is not a problem.
That's the first question, thanks. The second one?
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say hello to the people in the panel, Alexis, Professor Žižek. I'm Nestor Lopez, the ambassador of Venezuela to Slovenia. And since Venezuela has been referred to in a couple of opportunities, I would like to express, first of all, our solidarity to the Greek people and to the many other people in Spain, in Europe at large, that are enduring the terrible situation of the austerity measures that are being implemented in this crazy kind of economic policy. And I say kind because I am starting to doubt if this is economy after all, and my question would be more or less in that direction. Well, I'm a poor boy from a poor family from Latin American country, so I'm not a European citizen. However, I think that I got a terrible impression about what's going on down here or up here in Europe. I kind of feel that somehow or other we're moving backwards, in history. People are about to start becoming enslaved because this precarious jobs situation that is taking place everywhere in Spain, for instance, 27% unemployment, 30% in Greece, and forcing people to accept contracts, without any guarantees whatsoever for their rights, sounds more like servitude, and as if Europe would be moving back to feudalism. And I don't know if this is an impression that you would share with me, but I don't know if you could elaborate a bit on this. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Please.
Okay, I have a question to the future Prime Minister. Okay, so what happens, let's say Greece leaves the euro, and...
Can you please stand up so we can see you, please? It will be easier. Thanks.
So what
For the police to arrest you later, says Slavoj.
What happens if Greece leaves the euro? You go back to the drachma, and okay, so the value of all the deposits in Greece fall, I don't know, by 30 to 50%, and then you have bank runs, you have a spillover effect around Europe. How do you plan? Do you plan to stop it? Do you plan to leave the bank? Do you plan to let the banks go bankrupt, or do you plan to nationalize them? And the second part of my question is, you were mentioning Argentina a lot. For instance, Argentina today is introducing some alternatives to, for instance, manufacturing firms, like introducing worker cooperatives as an alternative to just nationalizing them. Do you have some similar ideas or projects? And what's the main focus you think for Greece's economic recovery would be? I know that you believe in alternative energy and tourism as a main focus.
So since the mic is already there, I've seen another hand there behind. Yeah. So the mic will come to you as well.
Hello. In my mind, along with the financial speculators, the media bears a big part of the responsibility for what is going on right now in the Europe, for basically not doing their job very well, for not reporting as they should. So my question is, what went wrong there after the Second World War? And
with the media, or?
Yeah, with the media. Okay. Because they're not doing their job. They're not reporting rationally, especially the private media. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
If there are more questions in the upper floor of the room, you can raise your hand, so we'll just make a round with the mic. But please be short, then we have a chance for more questions.
Please. Hi.
Yes.
I have two questions. One is, outside of this forum, in Venezuela, we say that sometimes people can cook in their own soup. Outside of this forum, where everybody kind of agrees, what do you think is a good action outside of this ideological space? And the second, what do you think about the non-aligned fiat currencies like Bitcoin? I know it may be too much of a futuristic question at this time, but I want to know if you believe in an alternative, non-fiat, non-aligned monetary system, and if you see it in the upcoming future.
Non-aligned or non-alienated? What did you mean?
I'm talking specifically about encrypted-based monetary system that is not governed by central banks.
Okay, thanks. I think it will be the last question, since this is the moment when I realized it's already midnight for Alexis. So it's already time to sleep or already time to party. So we will take these questions and then we will end. You can decide who wants to go first. And
I democratically decided here.
That you will be I democratically decided that I am the first. No.
No, wait, but maybe I should begin for the simple reason that it seems more fit to the situation that you have the last word.
So he's already your advisor, you see?
Sorry?
You're already strategically thinking like the future advisor.
I like the more neutral term consigliere, you know.
Okay, consigliere, please start.
Very briefly, can I say first about money? You know what's my problem? If it works, all this non-banking system, what I fear is, and here I remain the orthodox Marxist, that beneath this is the old Ricardo dream that we can have a cake and eat it. Then we have money, but which would be a really transparent money without commodity fetishism. You know, this is the old Ricardo dream, that you can somehow do an alternate version of money where you would just get the good function of money to coordinate. I'm just skeptical about it. World War II. I agree with you with one proviso. I'm just more of a pessimist, you know. Do you really think that once things were so much better and media, I think media were always, okay, there are differences up and down, but I don't believe that there was a golden era. For example, for some American leftists, it's even the 50s. They claim the 50s where there were still public intellectuals debates, and then French theory, deconstructionism, they ruined everything. I am a little bit skeptical here. Just Argentinian cooperative and so on. I'm again skeptical. You know, what I would like to do is, I remember in many Latino American countries, media like to report, that factory was taken over by cooperatives and so on. I would like to do something very simple, and a friend of mine, a friend of Linera also, did it, honest leftist. He just went to these same factories a year later, and the result is pretty sad. Like, either they are renationalized or go bankrupt. So don't expect too much, again, my pessimism from cooperatives. The slavery question from gentleman Venezuelan ambassador, that's a very important question. You know why? Because did Lazzarato already gave his talk?
Yeah, Moderator gave his talk and he was sitting here, but obviously he went to the toilet or for a drink, I'm not sure. But Eric Olin Wright is here, who wrote a lot about cooperatives, and I think he would mention Mondragon, for example.
Yeah, but, sorry?
Mondragon, the Spanish corporation, cooperative, yeah.
But all I'm saying is that you cannot universalize it. Don't expect, no, I'm here. Don't expect too much. But let me return to Lazzarato. The reason I admire him is that what he did theoretically is extremely important, because we definitely are, there are many forms, regressing to new forms of, if not slavery, then serfdom. In other words, I claim that capitalism can less and less globally afford even this level of bourgeois formal freedom. Like in the eyes of the law, we are all equal, second-class citizens, and so on. But what I like in Lazzarato's work is he demonstrated how all the ideological network which makes us accept this form of slavery, which is an ingenious operation of universalization of capitalism, in the sense that the subliminal ideology today is that, in a way, at different levels, we are all capitalists, you know. Even if you are, let's say you are alone, you barely can survive, but you decide to put some money aside for your health or for education of your son. The idea is, aren't you acting as a self-entrepreneur, investing into your own, you know, like it is as if we are all capitalists. And I think this is a pretty ingenious ideological operation. Why? Because as all efficient forms of ideology, it's not just theoretical bullshit, it throws a false light onto your very daily experience. It has a certain conviction, like truly, if I decide to economize and invest in my education, Am I not treating myself as an object of investment and so on and so on? In other words, when you, Alexis, were talking about this, not just political change, but change of everyday attitudes, I agree with you, because real ideology today is here, in everyday forms perceived as apolitical. I even agree up to a point with those who claim end of ideology at the big level of belief. No, ideology which matters is everyday ideology, how you perceive your daily situation, as we said before, what is possible, what is not possible. Like, the problem with SYRIZA is that simply people are so demoralized that they probably simply cannot imagine that it can work, that it's possible. The myth which is, as we know, supported by all the ruling media and so on and so on. So again, never underestimate the power of ideology today. Never, maybe never was at everyday level ideology as important as it is today. The end. Thank you.
So I didn't understand the first question so much, but it was a question about the Golden Dawn. I think that it's a real problem for us, Golden Dawn, and the development of the nationalism and fascism, neo-Nazis in Greece. But I want to say that the Nazis in Greece are the second hand of the system, of the same system. It's not an anti-systemic power, but it's the second hand of the same system. Before last week, there were a decision of the Minister of Justice in Greece, who is not, who doesn't belong to the right-wing party, and he decided and he announced an initiative for a new law against the racism and the racist actions of citizens and also of political parties or members of the parliament. It was an initiative to create a framework against the action of Golden Dawn in Greece. And we said that even we are in the opposition, we will support this law. The second day, Samaras and the government, the right-wing government, decided to get back this law. Why? Because Golden Dawn and Nazis in Greece are the second hand of Samaras' government. Because their theory is the theory of the two extremes. The one extreme is Golden Dawn and the other extreme is radical left. Even though our tradition in Greece, the tradition of the left, is a democratic tradition, we had a lot of struggles for democracy during dictatorship. We were in the civil, in the resistance in the Second World War, and the left in Greece is in the brain of the people in the same way with the resistance and with the resistance for democracy, even though they try to create a feeling that Golden Dawn and SYRIZA are the other sides of the same coin. But we will remain in our position that we will try to ask for the government to put this law for discussion in the parliament. And this is a promise for us that we will not keep Golden Dawn, if we will be in the power, to organize terrorist actions without the results of the law. So I think that it's a problem, and we have to try to find the solution of this problem. Secondly, the second question was about the nationalization of the banks. Look, It's a very interesting question, but we have to understand what are the banks now in Greece, and not only in Greece. Of course, I agree with you, I'm agreeing with you, to nationalize everything. But what to do these banks if we nationalize them? To nationalize the bankrupted banks in Greece, so to nationalize the debts? Why? Why to give the joint to the bank owners to get their money and to get the debt of the banks? So it's very combined and difficult question. I think that the solution is to create new banks than to nationalize these bankruptcy banks in Greece. So every time we have to discuss about what is radical and what is not radical, because it seems very radical to nationalize the banks, but at the same time, it's like to make a big hole in your in the public debt if we insist in these initiatives. You asked about the social economy. You asked about the Argentinian paradigm, and I believe that even though there are a lot of differences with Argentina and with Latin America, we have to learn a lot about their initiatives, and especially with their initiatives to transformate the institutions. For example, the social economy, the microcreditors in Argentina. I think that there are very, very great and very, very nice examples that we have to learn and to try to keep them in our framework. And last but not least, somebody said something about the media. About the media. I believe that the first victim of the neoliberal barbarian attack in Europe and in Greece was democracy. Is this democracy that we have now? In Greece, after the elections, the majority of the media accuse SYRIZA and criticize SYRIZA as SYRIZA is in the power. If you are not Greek and you will be in Greece the next time, next week, next days, and you try to watch the news, you will not understand if New Democracy is in the power or SYRIZA is in the power, because the news criticizes SYRIZA. Yesterday, there was a meeting of the manufacturers, the producers, and they asked for me and for Samaras to be there and to speak to them. Everybody accused me for what I say, for what I said. Nobody of them tried to criticize what the Prime Minister said. So it's a very, very strange situation. And why we have this situation? Because we don't have democracy, we have mediocrity. I used to say that in Greece, and I think that it's not only in Greece, because this is the big problem, this was the big problem in Argentina, in Venezuela, in Latin America, in all these countries that people forces tried to have the power, and they had the attack of their enemies, the political enemies. The attack were not the army and coup d'etat and dictatorship, but there was the media. In Greece, we have this corruption triangle. In the first corner, the first top of this triangle, is the bankrupted political system. In the second corner is the banks, the bankrupted banks. And in the third corner are the media. The bankrupted political system decided and gave money to the banks over of 200 billion euros the last 5 years, over 200 billion euros the last 5 years to the banks. But the owners of the banks, they took the public money, they didn't pay nothing for their pocket, but they remain in the management of their banks. And what they did, they gave loans to the media owners. In those media owners, that they were in the duty to support the bankruptcy political system and the bankrupted parties of this political system. And this is the vicious circle of this triangle of corruption. So I think that we have to discuss a lot about the transformation of democracy to mediocrity. And the real democracy is to try to say the truth to the people and to try to organize in the social media forms and initiatives to change this dictatorship of media. And this is very, very important, very, very important. But of course, we did a lot in this direction, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult because, as I said before, there is a division between the younger and the oldest people, and the older people. Why? Because the younger people informed by the social media, but the older people informed by the TV channels. So that's why the only way that we have is to lock the grandmothers and grandfathers in home in the next time, in the next election in Greece. So thank you very much.
Before leaving, please just a second. As said, already tomorrow at 12 o'clock you have an opportunity to ask more questions to Alexis Tsipras. At 9, Slavoj's lecture. Before I thank them too, I would like to thank our simultaneous translators who are doing a very good job the last days. And thanks Alexis for coming to Croatia just for one day in these difficult days. And thanks Slavoj for coming every year to Croatia.